Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 819A, and today's date is November 16th, 2015, and the title of this episode is IMF Ready to Accept the Chinese Yuan into the SDR basket to challenge the dollar. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, here in the United States, the economic data is continually getting worse and worse. I know the United States government, central bankers are trying to convince us that we're in a recovery. They continually put out these manipulated numbers, but when we look at the real economic data, we are seeing flashing red signals we're heading into a depression. Forget about a recession. Of course, as the corporate media picks up on how this economy is going, and they're saying it's starting to decline a little bit, they're going to say we're going to be entering into a recession. We are way past that. We are heading into a full-fledged depression, which will then lead into a collapse. Right now, we're looking at the Empire Fed, which missed expectations completely. It is the fourth month in a row and 9 months of the last 10 that the Empire Fed manufacturing printed in the negative territory. Negative 10.74. They were expecting a negative 6.34. This is the longest streak outside of a recession. So we're already in a recession. New orders have contracted for 7 straight months in a row. This entire economy is imploding on itself. The Baltic Dry Index is under 600 points, which means factories are not ordering any type of raw material to put together and create goods, which will then be shipped off to stores and businesses. It is not happening. And right now, we are crashing in retail. We are crashing in housing. We are crashing in employment, even though the government is trying to convince us that unemployment is at 5.0%, we know that this is a complete manipulated lie. How do we know this? Well, if you haven't been on an interview in 4 weeks, you are just not counted, and you've fallen off, which means you don't want a job. And we've seen this before. I mean, back in April of 2000, sales stalled in retail. And in March 2001, the recession began. And this is what we are seeing right now. Right now, when we look at this economy, everything is starting to fall apart. I mean, 92% of the economists were predicting that we were going to have a Fed rate hike in September. Well, guess what? They were all wrong. And of course, then they said October, then they said November, and here we are in December. Now I see Peter Schiff is out there, and he's suggesting that maybe the Fed might up the Fed rate, the interest rate. Now, when I see this, this tells me that they are planning to bring this economy down. And I've said this in my past reports. When the Fed, the central bank system, decides to raise interest rates, this is the signal that the economy is getting ready to be brought down by the central bank, because they want to do this before any type of an event. And we can see that we are headed in this direction. And in the beginning, they might bring it up only a couple basis points. Everyone will say, oh, look, the interest rate, it moved up a little bit. Everything is fine. Of course, what will happen, a lot of people will be pretty much bumped out of the real estate market because the house that they thought they were going to be able to get, they can no longer get because the interest rates have gone up a little bit. They can't afford it. So they either have to make it up with putting down a larger down payment. So that's going to be a problem, and real estate's going to be affected. But will it shatter the economy right away? No, it won't. It will put the economy on the track to collapse. And this way, they can plan everything out for the entire collapse. And this is what they're doing at this point, because the second time they raise the interest rates, this will be the full-fledged collapse. But they will not actually do it. They will say they're going to do it, and then we will see an event. This is where we are headed right now. The economic data is completely separate and apart from what the government is producing in the manipulated statistical numbers. Those numbers don't match what's really going on in the economy. We're already having reports that this year the retail sales are going to be a complete disaster. And once we get past Black Friday and Cyber Monday, this will give us a gauge on how it is going. Now, Russian President Putin is going to meet with Venezuela's Maduro to discuss energy ties. And the two leaders are discussing bilateral relations, which includes the energy sector. And they're looking to make some type of deal with oil trade, and hopefully combine and join forces to control the oil market. Because you have to remember, right now, everything is flowing from the west to the east. This is what we're seeing. Now, we talked about the Chinese Yuan renminbi becoming a reserve currency. Now, I remember when I started to talk about this, people were out there, absolutely impossible. It's never going to become a reserve currency. And we know the United States kind of stopped China by instructing the IMF not to include it. But it looks like the IMF is coming out, and they are saying, yes, we will be including the Chinese yuan to the SDR basket. Now, at this point, I don't think it's going to matter that much, because the economy in the Western world is falling apart. And at this point, the United States doesn't really care if they become a reserve currency. Because what they're going to do is they're going to push it to the next level. And that is create an event, then a war. So right now, while this whole thing is going on in France, it looks like the yuan is on par to become a reserve currency, which will join the US dollar, the Japanese yen, the British pound, the euro, and this is scheduled for November 30th. If the yuan's edition wins 70% or more of the IMF board, it will be the first time the number of currencies in the SDR basket, which determines the composition of loans made to countries such as Greece, has been expanded. Now, what is the likelihood of this happening? Well, China feels that it's going to happen. They said the only thing that will stop this is the US. If they decide to reject the yuan's inclusion, unless something dramatic happens during this time period, that will stop the yuan being included in the basket of SDRs. So this is something we need to look out for. This is something that is headed at us right now. Because we know the dollar is dying. We know at this point they can't push the debt any further. The Middle East is a complete mess. And we can see right now that the economic data and the real economic indicators are separate and apart, and this economy is collapsing. They've tried everything they possibly could. They tried to go all over the world to try to find money to bring in as revenue, which is FATCA. They tried Obamacare to tax the people as much as they possibly can to bring in the revenue to the government. They kept interest rates at 0%. There are even talks about going to negative interest rates. They are running out of bullets. They're running out of things to do to keep this system alive. And this is what's happening right now. I mean, Obamacare right now is basically a hindrance on the people here in the United States. It's not affordable. It's one big, gigantic tax on the American people. And when we look at this, we see that the premiums are going up and the deductibles are going up. And for those people who are not familiar with a deductible, What it means is once you get your insurance policy and you have a $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 deductible, you have to meet that first throughout the year, which means if you go to the doctor, you pay out of pocket until you hit that deductible. And if you don't hit that deductible, you pay for everything. If you hit the deductible, everything above that deductible might be covered by insurance, depending on your plan. And if you never hit that deductible, or if you do hit the deductible, the next year it starts all over. And people are starting to realize this, saying, okay, I pay for my policy, and I'm paying $500 a month, but the hidden cost is that I have to lay out another $3,000, another $5,000, another $10,000 if I go to the doctor. And people are complaining about this, and it's not helping them. I mean, David R. Rains, who's 60 years old, who lives in New Jersey, he's a former hardware salesman with chronic knee pain. He says, we have insurance, but we can't afford to use it. They have a $3,000 deductible. Everything comes out of his pocket. So this is what we're seeing right now. And it's just not good for the American people. And it's not going to get any better. Premiums are going to continually rise. Deductibles are going to continually rise. And I mentioned this before. Think about this for a second. How did they do this? Obama and his executive branch got together with the insurance companies who wrote the bill and said, listen, we can give everyone the same insurance, and all we have to do is raise the prices, the premiums, up to a certain point, and then we can accept everyone. And hopefully the younger people will take it, which will offset the older people. And we can come to this idea that everyone will get it, and if people don't want it, we will charge a penalty to force them into the system. This way, everyone has to take it. So at higher premiums, we can accept everyone. Higher deductibles, the insurance company doesn't have to pay out. The hidden taxes inside Obamacare and the penalty, the government makes revenue. But what we're seeing right now is that Obamacare is a nightmare. Right now it's failing. 50% of the co-ops are completely bankrupt. And Obamacare needs 22 million more people in the system to keep it alive. But don't forget, there is a bailout clause for the insurance company where the taxpayers will bail out the insurance companies if they don't make their profits. So this whole thing is a complete and utter disaster. And this economy right now is completely falling apart. It is accelerating. And as we go through this holiday season into 2016, it is going to get worse by 10 times. And the U.S. government central bankers know this. They know it is collapsing, and it's a matter of time. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.